Terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. After 2 strikes and bids in 48 hours, it almost seemed like there would be a third one this morning. But it was averted by Indian security forces. 2 suspected terrorists on motorbikes approached the main gate of an army camp in Domana in Jammu this morning and fired on the sentry post after security officials signalled them to stop. When security personnel retaliated, the terrorists fled from the spot. A massive search operation was launched, but the terrorists have not been traced so far. The attack this weekend was one of the worst since 2016, when an army brigade headquarters in Uri was attacked by Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists. And this time, the Sunjuan army camp in Jammu was attacked yet again by Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists with support from Pakistan's military establishment. Here's what happened.
Troops of the Indian military rushing inside the Sunjuan army camp in Jammu. Choppers can be seen flying like fireflies in the sky. This was the moment when the Sunjuan army camp in Jammu came under attack. 4 heavy armed terrorists dressed in army uniforms stormed this military base in the early hours of Saturday morning. They then opened fire and attacked family members of army personnel living inside residential quarters. A bloody firefight then ensued. The Indian Army deployed its special forces, cornering the terrorists inside a residential complex of the army camp. They were neutralized in the firefight, which went on for more than 24 hours. 7 lives were lost in the terrorist attack. 6 soldiers were martyred, while 1 civilian, the father of a soldier, died during the attack. 10 others were hurt. 1 woman who was pregnant was hurt during the terrorist attack. She later delivered a baby girl at the military hospital in Jammu. Evidence collected by Indian intelligence agencies points fingers at Pakistan yet again. India says that the terrorists belong to Pakistan-based Jaish-e-Mohammed, headed by Masood Azhar, who's one of India's most wanted terrorists. The Indian government had blamed Jaish-e-Mohammed for a similar attack on an Indian Army Brigade headquarters in Jammu and Kashmir's Uri. India's Defence Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, has issued a stern warning to Pakistan.
Well, giving the evidences to Pakistan will have to be a continuous process, because it has to be proven over and over and again, as many number of times, that their involvement is there for everybody to see it. And the evidences will only strengthen that argument. So giving that does not deny us our right to respond adequately and at a time which we think fit. Pakistan will pay for this misadventure.
The Indian Defence Minister says that the terrorists who attacked the camp in Jammu had received help from the Pakistani military when they infiltrated into India from Pakistan. The attack in Jammu was one of the worst terrorist attacks on India's armed forces. Just a day after the Indian Defence Minister warned Pakistan, security forces gunned down 2 more terrorists in Srinagar who tried to infiltrate into a CRPF camp on Monday. Bureau Report, WION.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has suffered yet another setback. A UK judge has refused to cancel the arrest warrant against him. The WikiLeaks founder has been living inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London for nearly 6 years now. The warrant was issued in 2012 after Assange skipped bail to avoid being extradited to Sweden, where he was facing charges of rape and assault. Those charges have been dropped since then, but the British warrant still remains outstanding. Lawyers of Assange had argued last week that the warrant should be dropped as there was insufficient public interest in upholding it. WION's London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark joins us live from that city. Good evening, Mandy. Take us through what happened in court today.
So this was a second application, really. The lawyer argued last week saying, look, it's past its point. It was all linked to this Swedish case. That has gone away. Really, it's time for this warrant to be dropped. The judge on that time disagreed with him. So it was probably an indication that he would disagree on different grounds. The judge then, his lawyer then reapplied, and he said, look, it's not in the British public interest to pursue it. Already £3.5 million have been spent trying to arrest Julian Assange because there was around-the-clock police presence around the Ecuadorian embassy for some time. Of course, that's been dropped. So a lot of money, taxpayer money, has been wasted trying to reach Julian Assange. But the judge, again, disagreed with this theory. The crime of skipping bail is an issue, and she doesn't think he should have special privileges. So it remains. Julian Assange does not believe his safety is secured once he leaves, because his fear is that if he is arrested by the UK forces, he will be handed over to the US, who want him to face criminal charges with links to that WikiLeaks documents.
So he's lost his second bid in a week to overturn that arrest warrant, which rests now on a mere technicality. There are health concerns because he's been living inside the embassy premises for almost 6 years now. What next then for Julian Assange? Does he still have legal recourse?
It seems like he has very little legal recourse. There isn't that around-the-clock police presence, so he could simply just walk out of the Ecuadorian embassy. But of course, he has a legal obligation to surrender himself to the police. He might not do that. He can't really leave the country because he will be stopped at the borders. So in many ways, it's up to him. He feels that the Ecuadorian embassy, for the minute, is the only safe haven for him because he does believe that he will be sent to the United States.
Mandy Clark, thanks very much for joining us. Now, Julian Assange is now technically a citizen of Ecuador. And his legal troubles there continue. The Pentagon has asked for a $686 billion budget boost in 2019, saying that it needs to counter threats from China. But what is the Pentagon afraid of? Is Beijing trying to turn the Indian Ocean into a Chinese lake? Here's a report. Is the Indian Ocean being turned into a Chinese lake? According to the Pentagon, China is seeking regional hegemony in the Indo-Pacific in the near term. And in the long term, it is aiming for nothing less than global preeminence over the United States. For the Pentagon to spell it out ahead of its annual budget proposal signals the world that the challenge from China is serious enough for the US to acknowledge it publicly. But Washington has been recalibrating for some time now. Washington's recalibration has been evident. Recall former President Barack Obama's pivot to the Pacific. Current President Donald Trump named China and Russia as competitors. He termed the Asia-Pacific as the Indo-Pacific, an obvious device to draw India. And a quadrilateral comprising the US, India, Japan and Australia is shaping to challenge China. India has reason to welcome the US recalibration. Just look at the inroads China has made into the Indian Ocean using its money power and commercial muscle, resulting in military strategic spin-offs. China has been island grabbing in the South China Sea for some years now, reclaiming shoals and reefs in the Paracel and Spratly chain and militarizing them. It also has naval facilities in Cambodia. From there, China moved closer to Indian shores, looking to develop Chittagong port in Bangladesh into a deep water harbor. The plan is to expand its ability to handle cargo traffic from the current 30 million tons to 100 million tons. Incidentally, Chittagong will provide easy access to India's northeast as well. Moving southward now, China has leased Hambantota port in Sri Lanka for 99 years. It is developing a special economic zone in that area. While Chinese submarines have been spotted in Colombo harbour, it may not be long before they enter Hambantota. China is reported to be developing a naval facility in the Maldives and is building a naval base near Gwadar in Pakistan. They recently inaugurated a naval base in Djibouti on the Horn of Africa. Reports of a naval base on the Kenyan coast are also being heard. To counter China, India has been building up its naval strength in Port Blair and Car Nicobar in the Andaman chain. It is seeking to lease an airport near Sri Lanka's Hambantota port and has an agreement with Oman to use the Dukmu port on the Arabian Sea. Last month, it signed an agreement with Seychelles to build an airfield and a jetty on the Assumption Island. And since 2007, India has been operating a radar and surveillance station in the northern tip of Madagascar. India signed an agreement with Mauritius in March 2015 to develop sea and air transport facilities on the Agalega Island, located 1,000 kilometers north of Mauritius. These are crucial Indian strategic strongholds and footholds in a region where 2/3 of the world's energy supplies pass. They're not of the breadth and scale at which the Chinese operate, But India is seeking to work with the stakeholders in the region, providing training, infrastructure and naval platforms so that all benefit. You could call it the string of flowers. Bureau Report, WION. The ice thawed weeks ahead of the ongoing Winter Olympics in South Korea. But after years of threats, sanctions and embargoes of various kinds by countries around the world, that ice was broken primarily by the leaders of the fractured Korean peninsula itself. It began with an awkward meeting in a town along the de facto border between North and South Korea and culminated in the visit to the Winter Olympics being held in South Korea by the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Miss Kim Yo-jong. North Korean teams are also participating in these games. The Olympian diplomacy was so successful that the thaw is now a stream of friendly overtures flowing from North to South Korea. The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, has urged a, quote, further livening up of the warm climate of reconciliation between the divided Koreas. If the United States really wanted peace on the Korean peninsula, US Vice President Mike Pence had a peculiar way of showing it. He ignored the North Korean delegation at the Games opening ceremony, and on the flight back home, Mr. Pence stressed that the US, South Korea and Japan would continue to isolate North Korea economically and diplomatically till it abandons its nuclear and ballistic missiles program. But grudgingly, the US Vice President was reported as telling a reporter the following: if you want to talk, we'll talk, referring, of course, to North Korea. There seems no shortage of world leaders and countries eager in the photo opportunity should North and South Korea shake hands and diffuse tension. Take Germany's former Chancellor, 78-year-old Gerhard Schröder. He's marrying a South Korean lady, moving to the country, and the man who has stayed away from politics since his term ended in 2005 commented for the first time on a political standoff. He expressed his disapproval of US Vice President cold-shouldering the North Korean visitors at the Games. Though foreign policy was never Mr. Schröder's strong point, it is only a matter of time before the German leader offers his services to mediate. Still, it is North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un who's having the last laugh. His invitation to visit Pyongyang was conveyed by his sister to South Korean President Moon, and unfortunately for the US Vice President and the former German Chancellor, their names were not on the guest list. The island nation of Tonga is cleaning up after a powerful cyclone hammered the island and destroyed its parliament house, no less. Here's a report.
Toppled trees, roofs torn off, bent power cables, flooded low-lying areas. Cyclone Gaeta, a Category 4 storm packing winds of 230 kilometers per hour, battered the island nation of Tonga and caused widespread damage and panic among residents. Authorities had declared a state of emergency, expecting heavy rain and huge coastal swells.
We were very scared, too scared. Yeah, the kids were crying.
I woke up this morning very sore and decided to come here to the hospital.
Tonga is an archipelago comprising 169 islands around 3,000 kilometers east of Australia. The cyclone was so severe that even Tonga's 100-year-old parliament building was completely destroyed. Emergency management teams are now out clearing roads and restoring power and water connections. Even though Gaeta is the worst storm to hit the country in more than 60 years, there are no reports of any casualties.
Very thing that racing through my heart when I go through this morning, surely with this there must be people dead. I think that we are extremely lucky.
It's sad to see because a lot of the heritage buildings in town have been destroyed, and there are a lot of houses that have lost their roofs or lost part of the houses.
The tropical cyclone is now making its way through Fijian waters and is expected to pass directly over the main Fiji Islands with wind speeds of up to 275 kilometers per hour. Bureau Report, WION.